Communities and law enforcement agencies usually experience a shock when the killer's insane plan to kill people is exposed. Which murder cases are the most bizarre? Here are detailed descriptions of a few incidents, emphasizing the complex and disturbing factors of each murderer's scheme. Number 15. The Zodiac Killer. One of the most notorious and enigmatic serial killers in American history. The Zodiac Killer is believed to have committed at least 5 confirmed murders in Northern California between the late 1960s and early 1970s. He is renowned for his enigmatic letters to newspapers in which he challenges law enforcement with riddles and coded messages. The Zodiac killed people at random in a variety of places. Cryptograms were a common feature of his letters. Some of them are still unsolved. These exchanges exposed a mind that enjoys playing practical jokes on law enforcement and is fixated on puzzles. The Zodiac's identity is still a mystery despite a thorough investigation and a large number of suspects, making his plot one of the most mysterious in criminal history. Number 14. The Toy Box Killer. David Ray Parker was a sadistic criminal who raped, tortured, and kidnapped women in his soundproof trailer. That's why he was also known as the Toy Box Killer. There were whips, chains, pulleys, straps, clamps, leg spreader bars, surgical blades, saws, and the gynecologist-styled table in this trailer. When Cynthia Vigil, one of his victims, broke free from captivity and 3 days of torture in 1999, his scheme was discovered. David was taken into custody after she was able to get to safety and call the police. The severity of his planned cruelty was exposed when investigators discovered precise torture logs and recordings of the horrifying incidents. Ray displayed a very unsettling mindset through his exhaustive planning and psychological blackmail of his victims. Number 13. The Manson Family Murders. In the late 1960s, Charles Manson was the leader of the Manson Family, a cult-like group that carried out a number of horrific killings, including the renowned Tate-LaBianca murder. Manson thought that these killings would set off a tragic racism war. It got revealed after Manson and his supporters were taken into custody. Manson's ability to manipulate and control his followers to persuade them to carry out murders on his behalf was made clear by testimony and confessions made during the trial. The idea was to start the race war Manson expected by accusing African for the killings and causing chaos. Number 12. The BTK Killer. Dennis Rader, sometimes referred to as the BTK, which means bind, torture, and kill. For decades, the killer terrorized Wichita, Kansas, with a string of deliberately planned murders. Between 1974 and 1991, he murdered 10 people, picking his victims carefully and frequently following them around for months. In 2005, when Rader started writing sarcastic letters to the media and police again, his secret plan came to light through digital evidence that was linked to him. These communications ultimately resulted in his capture. His thorough diaries and confession made during the trial revealed his methods for picking, pursuing, and killing his victims in addition to his fixation with control and bondage. Number 11. The Moors Murders. 5 children were taken away, raped and killed in the Manchester region of England between 1963 and 1965 by Ian Brady and Myra Hindley. They used recordings and pictures to prove their crimes. When Hindley's brother-in-law, David Smith, went to the police in 1965 after witnessing Brady kill their last victim, Edward Evans, the plan came to an end. The couple's erratic behaviors were exposed by later investigations, which also included proof of sexual abuse and torture. The public was shocked to learn of the recordings and photos, which gave insight into their horrible actions. Number 10. The Green River Killer. Gary Ridgway, the Green River Killer, murdered at least 49 women in Washington state between 1982 and 2001. He primarily targeted vulnerable women, such as runaways and sex workers, often strangling them and disposing of their bodies in the Green River. Ridgway's plot was exposed in 2001 when advancements in DNA technology linked him to several of the murders. During his confession, he revealed his method of luring victims, gaining their trust, and then attacking them. Ridgway's ability to evade capture for so long showcased his cunning and adaptability. Number 9. Richard Chase. Richard Chase, known as the Vampire of Sacramento, murdered 6 people in California in the late 1970s. He drank the blood of his victims and cannibalized their remains, driven by delusions that consuming blood would prevent his heart from shrinking. Chase's scheme was exposed in 1978 when he was apprehended following a police search of his apartment, which revealed evidence linking him to the murders. His bizarre behavior and the gruesome nature of his crimes highlighted his severe mental illness. Chase's delusional beliefs and horrific acts shocked investigators and the public alike. Number 8. The Hillside Stranglers. In the late 1970s, 10 women were sexually assaulted and killed in Los Angeles by cousins Kenneth Bianchi and Angelo Buono. Before torturing and killing their victims, they pretended to be police officers and enticed them. When Bianchi was detained in 1979 for attempting to use a credit card that had been stolen, the scheme came to light. After he admitted to the killings and implicated Buono, they were both taken into custody. Their trial exposed the heinous techniques they employed, such as physical abuse and psychological manipulation, to torment and murder their victims. Number 7. The Cleveland Torso Murders. At least 12 victims had their torsos scattered throughout Cleveland, Ohio, after at least one murderer, known only as the Cleveland Torso Murderer, dismembered them between 1935 and 1938. Identification was challenging because the victims were frequently sporadic individuals. The killer was never found, despite a thorough investigation overseen by renowned law enforcement officer Elliot Ness. Fear spread widely after the horrifying discovery of disfigured bodies, many of which were missing limbs and heads. The exactness of the mutilation indicated a certain level of medical expertise, but the identity and scope of the murderer are still unknown. Number 6. The Night Stalker. Richard Ramirez, also known as the Night Stalker, committed a series of home invasion murders and sexual assaults in California between 1984 and 1985. He targeted random homes, attacking residents with guns, knives, and other weapons. Ramirez's scheme was exposed in 1985 when he was captured by residents of a neighborhood he was attempting to burglarize. Recognized from news reports, they subdued him until police arrived. His trial revealed a deeply disturbed individual who relished the terror he inflicted, believing he was acting on behalf of Satan. Number 5. Ted Bundy. Bundy had a complex and terrifying plan. He would frequently pretend to be hurt, put on a cast, or employ other strategies to win his victims' compassion and confidence. He would overwhelm and attack them after luring them into his car or a remote location. Bundy would return to the bodies of his victims, carrying out horrific deeds. The fact that he killed people in several states at first made it difficult to link the killings. But in the end, his habits and manner of working got him arrested. Bundy's trial, flight, and capture all served to highlight just how shrewd and manipulative he was. Number 4. Jeffrey Dahmer. Dahmer's scheme involved a disturbing combination of manipulation, alcohol, and drugs. He often targeted vulnerable young men, particularly those from marginalized communities, by offering them money or shelter. Once in his apartment, Dahmer would drug, strangle, and dismember his victims, engaging in acts of necrophilia and cannibalism. The gruesome evidence found in Dahmer's apartment shocked investigators and the public alike. His eventual confession detailed the horrifying extent of his crimes and shed light on his troubled psyche. Number 3. Aileen Wuornos. Wuornos' plan originated from desperation and a turbulent life filled with mistreatment and adversity. She claimed that her victims had abused or threatened her after turning to prostitution as a means of subsistence. Wuornos' killings were typified by close-range shootings, which were frequently carried out during or following sex. She exhibited erratic and confrontational behavior during her trial, revealing her volatile behavior and troubled past. Evidence and witness accounts presented a picture of planned violence rather than unprovoked reprisal, despite her claims of self-defense. Number 2. Ed Gein. Gein's scheme was rooted in a twisted obsession with his deceased mother and a fascination with anatomy. He would frequent graveyards to exhume bodies, from which he crafted trophies, furniture, and clothing. Gein's crimes were discovered when he was arrested for the murder of hardware store owner Bernice Worden. During a search of his farmhouse, investigators uncovered human remains, including Worden's decapitated corpse. Gein's macabre creations and the horror of his crimes inspired numerous works of fiction, cementing his place in American folklore. Number 1. John Wayne Gacy. Gacy was a predatory opportunist who took advantage of his reputation as most liked member of his community to carry out his scheme. He frequently used the guise of offering work or money to entice his victims, who were primarily young men and teenage boys. Once inside his house, Gacy would subdue them, rape them sexually, and then either strangle or suffocate them. He then dumped some of his victims in the nearby rivers and buried the majority of them beneath his house. Those who knew Gacy were shocked by his double life as a prosperous businessman and the vicious killer, and the discovery of several bodies on his property revealed the depth of his depravity. These cases reveal the chilling and often meticulous nature of these killers' plots, showcasing the depth of human depravity and the challenges faced by law enforcement in bringing them to justice. Law enforcement agencies and communities reflect on the incident to identify lessons learned and areas for improvement in preventing and responding to similar threats in the future. If you enjoyed our video and want to see more like that, please subscribe to our channel.
Music licensing reimagined.